Okay, we're going to talk about the anatomy of a web page. You're going to make your first web page and then move on to an assignment. We actually make one to submit to me for a grade. Um, but we got to back up for a minute and do some stuff which is, maybe it sounds a little boring, but it's really, really, really important. So please pay attention to this because it'll make a difference in your grades. How you name your files and folders is really important in web design. First of all, knowing what they are and where they are, keeping organized is critically important. I think more than any other class I teach. And then following certain naming rules. Modern operating systems allow you to get by with really doing all kinds of naming things in ways that we would normally, in the old days, would never have approved of. But web servers are not as generous about those things. And you have no idea the web server that stuff is on, you're going to, or so on, how it pays attention to names or not. So you got to really use rigid naming rules. Some of these are because this is just the way it has to be. Some of these are because it'll help you stay organized. So this is a handout. This handout is there on your Moodle page. You can take a look at it with me if you wish. I'm going to kind of read through some of it and talk about it a little bit for just a moment. There is a sidebar in your textbook on page 54 which says naming conventions, and we will use all these rules. And the key ones are lowercase all file names. It's true that most modern web servers can handle uppercase or lowercase, but this will help you stay organized, and for this class it's the rule: lowercase all file and folder names. No spaces in your file and folder names. So therefore, if you have multiple words, use a hyphen or an underscore to separate them, to indicate a space. No special characters. No dollar signs or asterisks or percentage signs or anything like that. Nope. Just words, numbers, hyphens, underscores, all lowercase, files and folders. In addition, with the exception of a few statements, a few cases actually inside the web documents themselves, HTML and CSS, with the exception of a few, HTML and CSS also should be all in lowercase for this class. Will it work in uppercase? Yeah, generally, but let's stick to all lowercase. Okay. Finally, the sidebar, and by the way, here's the sidebar over here. Self-imposed conventions, that's what some of these are. Keep your file names short, very important. File names may be case sensitive, therefore we do all lowercase. Avoid special characters, never use character spaces within file names, yes. Proper suffixes, yes, it really has to be .html or whatever. And about the suffixes, that's what this next section is about. Okay. For some reason, modern computer operating systems, whether it's Mac or whether you're running Windows 10 or whatever, think it's easier for you to hide the extensions, the .doc or .docx or .html, which we could call the suffixes. Suffixes or extensions, same thing, right? So it started with Windows 7, and then since then through Windows 10, and then many Mac operating systems, they get hidden from you by default. It's really important that you change that. How do you know if it's happening? Well, just take a look. I'm of course running a Windows machine, but if I go to this one, look at this folder I happen to have here. It says .html, 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 .gif, .css, so on. I can see the file extensions. If you can't see the file extensions in your Finder window or your My Computer window or on your drive, then there is a problem. The problem is your system is hiding them from you, and you got to change that. Computers in our labs should already be changed throughout the college. But what you need to do is you need to, depending on your operating system, if it's Windows 10, here's some instructions. But if it's some Mac OS or something else, or if just in general, the way you figure these things out all the time is you just Google it. You Google Win 10 hidden file extensions or show file extensions, that sort of thing. Just Google it, and then so that's it. File extensions, window, whatever, or in your own operating system. Just Google it, and you'll get instructions for how to show them. and it is essentially on PCs, it's go to the control panel, appearances, personalization, so on and so forth, and there'll be a checkbox somewhere that says show them. Then you'll see them all. Okay, so let's say you don't do this, or you forget or something, right? What's going to happen is you're going to be adding a file extension. You're going to realize, oh, I need to make it say .html, but you're not going to know that .html is really there already. It's hidden. So what you're really going to be writing is .html. As one set of those is going to be hidden. And you'll say, well, isn't that the same thing? No, it is not. Web documents, we have to know exactly what they're named. And .html and HTML is not the same thing. It won't find the document. Your document would be missing if that was what it was called, because you wouldn't know the right file name. And same thing with .css, CSS, .jpg, JPG. These things get duplicated if you can't see them and you force them to go in there. So that's file names and file and folder names. And you will lose points in future exercises if you don't follow these rules, these naming conventions. Okay, so let's continue on. So as we discussed, as I discussed in that introductory term stuff, web pages are governed by simple text documents that link to and arrange images and so on, right? And I showed you this really simple document, right? This Jen's Kitchen. Okay, well, let's take a look at the HTML and CSS for this document, and then talk about them and explain how they work. This is this document on the web, and this is an actual full URL, and this actually goes through a domain name and IP address and all that stuff. But I actually have those documents. By the way, if you hear any clicking noises, my heater seems to be turning on. I actually have those documents on my drive. Okay, and in fact, I just showed you the folder. There it is. And I have lots of other things here which you can ignore. But we have something called Jen's Kitchen.html. And I'm going to select that. I'm going to do a right click on it and choose Edit with Notepad++. And if you have Notepad++ or brackets or something else like that installed, in fact, I have open with brackets here, would be an option also. You will have those choices here if you've installed that. Or if you're working on an computer, college lab computer, that should be a choice too. Or you could open up Notepad++ first, and then do File Open and go open up a document. Works the same way. Okay, good. I actually have something else opened here, which we'll ignore. Okay, good. Okay, so this is your first look, perhaps, at Notepad++. And if you're using brackets, it would be something similar to that. And some other program maybe too. You'll see a few things just to notice that there's some things in different colors, right? And if you look here, you'll see kind of the text you would expect to see. You know, it says it's got something called Jen's Kitchen as a title, but it's got different sections, right? It's got a doc type. It opens the HTML. It's got a head. It's got a body. Okay. When the part of the website that you see, the stuff you think of as the website, which actually appears in the browser, is all the stuff in the body. This other stuff is stuff about the website, okay, or links to other documents that it needs. So, can we see, for instance, where it says, if you love to read about strong cooking, so on. Why is that broken there? For a different kind of demonstration. We'll get that in a minute. If you love to read about cooking and eating strong, what does that mean? Well, we'll take a look. Would like to find out so on and so forth, and then we see so okay, and then we also see Jen's Kitchen is written there. Good. Look, let's go back and look at the document. Jen's Kitchen. If you look to read about cooking and eating, oh, it looks like it's in bold. It said strong. Does that mean bold? Actually, that has a different meaning. It means important, and it happens to bold, right? We see Jen's Kitchen is there, right? Sure. And we see there's an image there. Is there an image in this file? Yes, there is. It says IMG, that stands for image. SRC, where is it? It's called foods.gif. GIF. And in fact, you would see there is a file called foods.gif in this folder sitting here waiting to be used. That is what we're getting. It's being picked up by that. Okay. And then we see Jen's Kitchen. That's that heading there. It's broken on multiple lines. By the way, if you're ever using Notepad++ or some other code editor, and it looks like your stuff's going off the screen here, right? Like stuff's going off the screen there. you may have to tell it to word wrap. Word wrap is an option either under a menu and or as an icon in the menu area. These programs are such simple text editors like Notepad, regular old Notepad, that you have to tell them if you want words to wrap. Okay. Also, I noticed that I'm getting this red on the icon for the tab for Jen's Kitchen. That means there are unsaved changes. I can do Control S to save. I just did it. Now it turns back blue. Okay. I do see that the text that I'm reading is here. The images that I'm seeing there and there are here. So what's the big deal? Well, notice that there's also something called a link to a style sheet. Okay, so that's where the CSS is coming from. That's where the presentation is coming from. What if I remove it? I'm just going to cut it out. I'm going to save, and I'm going to run this again. I'm going to run Launch in Chrome. Many of these programs have the option to do that, or they have a live preview like Brackets does, where you just click on it's like a lightning bolt, and it opens up in a browser like window, which really is Chrome. Or did you know you can actually go to a browser, any browser, and go Control O, like open file, open, and you could go open it up that way. Go navigate and find the file. Or you can actually just go find your file and drag and drop it on a browser window, which is the same thing as going run launch in Chrome. Okay, but why does it look different now? I removed the CSS. All we're seeing now is the structure. Okay, this is what what web documents look like when they don't have CSS. The image is still there, but there's no margins. The text for the heading is there, and it is bigger because it's called a heading in the structure, right? In fact, it's called an H1. See, H1 opens, H1 closes. Most of the tags we have are two-part tags. They open and close around information. H1, that means top level heading, opens and closes around both the image and the text that says Jen's Kitchen. P, paragraph, opens and closes around the paragraph. Strong, opens and closes around the words that we want to be called strong. EM, that means said with emphasis, opens and closes around those words. Another paragraph opens and closes. Notice that the images are different. These are called empty or replacement tags. It is just a one-part tag. It just opens. It's just a thing. It's just an image. It goes to an image. It brings the image on. This thing called small, which means kind of like legalese, like legal type. It opens and closes. The whole body opens and closes. The whole document opens and closes, which is HTML. The head opens and closes. The title opens and closes. But the document type, which is at the top, does not open and close. This is HTML only, okay? Notice this doc type to begin with. You read about this stuff too. This relates to your chapter 4. This doc type means we are now using HTML5, which is the newest and best, most up-to-date HTML version. There are lots of other doc types out there. In fact, you'll see some related to other versions of HTML. They actually are much longer. The nice thing about the doc type for HTML5, it is extremely simple. You'll also notice it's one of the few places we use capital letters here. Everything else in our tagging and our markup, which is adding information to information, everything else was lowercase letters, right? Like title and head and body and H1 and P and strong and so on. Doc type does include some capital. It also includes as kind of a special character too. It includes an exclamation mark or point there. You also may see references in your textbook and sometimes in doc types to something called XHTML. XHTML, which is a stricter language, very similar to HTML. It is used in some web documents. It's actually the language used by Microsoft Word and lots of other applications also. XHTML is a different version of something similar. Okay, so we've got this local copy of Jen's on my computer of Jen's Kitchen. This is what it looks like when it has just HTML. Okay, well, where is the CSS and what does it look like? Let me show you the CSS. CSS in this case is in a separate document, and what we have here, I'll put it back in, is a link to that document. And it says link to a style sheet. And what is the style sheet called? It's called kitchen.css. I'll save this again. And let's go find kitchen.css. It's right in my folder. It has to be because that link just says the document's name. It doesn't give a path to it. It just says, go find it. It's right there. That's what that means, just by giving the name. Here's kitchen.css. Again, I'm going to edit with Notepad++. And you'll see all of a sudden it's very different. It's still there's some color on some things, right? There's some indicators of different structure, but all there is instructions. Style sheets are just instructions, and they're instructions about things you can figure out pretty easily just by looking at it without even learning it yet. It says go to the body and make the font Verdana and give it a width of 80% and give it margins of a certain size. It says go to the H1 and give it a font of this font, Georgia, in italics at a certain size. EMs are sizes. You'll learn more about that later. Give it a certain color. This code means a certain color. We'll learn about how that works later. It says go to this IMG and give it a certain margins. Go to this the IMG inside the H1 and give it a different kind of margin also. Give a small thing that's a small, give it a certain color. So what we got here is sizes, fonts, colors, margins, layout. In general, this is the stuff that CSS does. It's a separate document. It kind of rides along with or on top of or is linked to by this link here. And I'm going to save this. I'm going to run it again. And there it is. All of a sudden we see we've got margins, we've got the space around this image, we've got this space around the image, we've got different fonts, we've got sizes, we got the paragraphs have spacing around them and so on. And that's what CSS brings. So HTML gives us the structure of the information. Remember, when I say structure, I mean it tells the body what's in the body. The H1, what is the H1? What is the top level heading? It tells a paragraph to be a paragraph. It tells the stuff that's going to be strong it identifies that carries meaning with it. It tells another paragraph to be a paragraph. It gives you an HR, which is a horizontal rule, which means different information is coming after this. There's a change in topic. It says small stuff, you be small, you be like legalese. It says the body closes. It says HTML closes. And also tells us some things about the document. In this head area, I haven't talked too much about this. A really important thing in the head is the title. The title is the name of the document. It isn't a name that appears. It's actually similar to the words that appear in the H1 in this case, but it doesn't have to be. It's the name of the document. So if we search for this document on Google, what we would see as the result would be the title. It's the name of the document. We also see the name of the document in the tab. When I hover over the tab, it says Jen's Kitchen. That name appears there too. Okay. So we've got a general overview of. Let's make sure I'm looking back through. One term that you'll see is semantic makeup. Semantic markup. Semantic. Well, that's what the structure of HTML is. It's adding meaning. It's adding meaning to the text that's already there. H1 has a meaning. It means top-level heading. Paragraph has a meaning. It means paragraphs. It acts like a paragraph. Strong or EM, those things have meaning. So we have to keep that in mind. It's not just structure for the purpose of presentation. That's different. That's CSS, right? Okay, so in this thing here, you're probably getting the idea that there is kind of like a minimum structure. And this is a minimum structure. Minimum structure is to have a doc type, and this is a doc type, to have our HTML, to have our head, to have a title. This CSS is not required in a minimum structure of HTML document. To have a body, and then there's probably stuff in the body, but it's not exactly required that there be any. And then we close the HTML. So that's a minimum structure. So what I want you to do now with me, and you can pause if you want and do this again, is either here right now in your document, go File, New, or click on the New button. Get a blank page sheet, get a blank page in your code editor, be it brackets or Notepad++. And I want you with me to make your first real web document. So I'm going to type along, and you type too. You can find this in your textbook. You can find this actually in the next assignment we're going to do. It's listed there in the document that goes along with it, but we might as well do it right now with me too here. So we want to first make a document. Now every tag has what we call these open and closed angled brackets. All right. More than, less than symbols, call them angled brackets. Some people call them chevrons. Same thing. Right. And then we got an exclamation point. And all caps, very few things in all caps. Here's one, doc type. Then a space, HTML. That means use HTML. Good, okay. Now I'm going to continue along. I'm going to type in open the HTML. Whenever I type an open tag, I like to type the closing tag right afterwards. I do slash HTML. You see I'm getting some little tips there, some code tips. Some programs more than others offer these things which you can use or not, which they just annoy me, but anyway. Okay, something's going on here. First of all, do you notice that I'm not seeing any colors in any of these? Did you look back in the Jen's Kitchen? Do you see how things are kind of like in colors and stuff, right? But the document I'm doing doesn't have any. Okay, in Notepad++, you need to set your language. In Brackets and some other programs, that's a similar idea is when you save the file, you give it a name, and that helps to set the language. So right now, the program, until you either first save it, in the case of some programs, or in the case of Notepad++, until you give it a language, it's not going to highlight anything or give you anything helpful because it doesn't know what language you're typing in. These programs can be used to type all kinds of different languages. So it's not going to start recognizing it until you tell it what the language is, either by saving it with a certain file extension, or in the case of Notepad++, we go to language, we'll go under H, and we'll see, look at all the languages it has. If you go through this list, you can see many. We'll click on HTML, and all of a sudden, things are highlighted here, right? We also see that it's got a red here, right? So I haven't saved anything yet, so I better save it. And this is a point where I want to suggest to you that on your drive, in a folder you're using for this class or whatever, please keep yourself organized. Please get a drive for this class, or share drive and make a folder on there. We don't need that much space for this class, but some. So keep your files all together in one place, back it up on your hard drive or your computer and so on too. Keep extra copies someplace. Yes, all that stuff. Whenever you start a new project, you're going to want to have your basic structure here. We might as well keep a file you could just copy. That's what I suggest, right? So I'm going to start with that. We'll talk more about that in the future when we move on to our next real project with folders and stuff. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to do a file, save or save as would be the same thing here. And I'm going to save mine in, I'll save it someplace else, right there, I guess, whatever. And I'm going to call it blank. You could call it start, you could call it beginning, you could call it something else. The idea is making a file that you're just in the future going to copy, and then you're going to rename for what the thing you really want to make. That's the idea here. Okay, so I'm just going to say save. So now it's called blank.html. It knows to call itself HTML because I gave it that language here. I could have forced that name in there too. That'd be okay. If you ever are typing something and it just shows up as odd stuff and you notice it's not HTML, it's .txt, that's what's going on. You need to save it as .html. That's part of it too. When you go to run it in a browser, it doesn't show up as, it just shows up as strange text and not as like real HTML stuff is supposed to. Okay, so HTML. I'm going to put some extra blank lines in there. Good. And now let's continue along, shall we? I'm going to open and close a head. Head is information about the document, not the document itself, but it's still very important. Now that the language is chosen, one reason I like to do the open and closing tags at the same time is they will light up and give me this feedback that says, oh yes, you've got them both right. They link together. If I did not spell one of them correctly, they would not happen, right? So when I spell it correctly, it's okay. All right, and now inside the head, I'm going to put a tab. And the idea, this is an extremely simple page, and tabbing is not necessary. It's supposed to keep ourselves organized, but it's a good practice. This stuff is going to be subsets of the head. You could tab the head in also and say it's subsets of the HTML. You can even tab in the HTML to begin with and say it's subsets of the doc type. But at least the things that are subsets of the head and of the body should be tabbed in. And then maybe further tabbing beyond that in some cases too. Okay, here's something we didn't see in that first file, which is called, we're going to call a required piece of text. Is a meta care set. Meta care set, then equal sign, and then quotation marks. This idea of having a tag that then has some characteristic added to it, like in this case, care set or whatever, and then having equal sign and having quotation marks, having this is all like a modifier to the tag. The tag is meta. It's being modified by this care set. This is something we're going to repeat over and over and over again. It's going to be another word, a property, and an equal sign, then quotation marks, and then on. That's what we're going to do. In fact, we're going to have a whole bunch of them. In this case, what we're doing is we're telling the document to recognize a certain alphabet, which is our normal keyboard and alphabet. UTF-8 is what that's called. You can learn more about this in your text. Let's just say that for us, it's a required part of the document. Okay, and then a title also. I'm going to open the title. And then I'm going to close the title. And it lights up, gives me that feedback, good. And just to remind myself, I could put in here, title here. Good, sure. All right. And what else? That's all that's required in the head. Oh, something I forgot to show you. That just reminds me. Back here in this Jen's Kitchen, did you notice that what happens if I put a lot of spaces in here or some extra breaks in here? This stuff doesn't matter. HTML will just add a single space in between words. It doesn't listen to breaks or things like that. This is it's not a word processing program. It just looks at the text. It looks at the structure. So if I save this and run it, the document doesn't change. It doesn't mean I think you should do that kind of thing because it makes it look disorganized and hard to read when you're actually doing your editing. But do realize that HTML just cares about the structure of the text. Okay, so let's do our body. Open the body. Close the body. Body means this is the stuff that's actually displayed on the website. And for our basic minimum structure, we don't need anything else, but I think it's useful to hit a tab key. Every document will have an H1. So let's put one in there. All right. And every document will have at least one paragraph. This is a good time for me to mention that some people think because headings are numbered, there's an H1, H2, H3, and then we seldom get much below H4, but there's actually H5 and H6 also, different levels of headings. H1 is the biggest, it's the top level heading, and then you go down from there. Think of it like an outline. Paragraphs, no, paragraphs are just paragraphs. Paragraphs are just paragraphs. There's no P1, P2, P3, anything like that, no. In fact, I think headings are the only thing which is organized that way. Headings are. So here we go. We have our first web page, blank web page, and I'm going to save it like that, and that will be good to hold on to keep handy. Now since we have this here, let me continue along and say, maybe I would do a file save as and call it I'm going to call it hello. I don't have to put the HTML in there. It will show up automatically. It's called hello now. And now I want you to do this. I want you to type in here, hello world. And then down here for your H1, type hello world. And then for your paragraph, type anything you want just to say that you've done it. And let's go ahead and save it, and let's go ahead and run it. Okay, and that I obviously misspelled my hello. this is the that is your first web page there. That's HTML only, and that is fine. Remember, HTML can be kind of ugly, but it's structure that's important. It is important you have a strong structure there. So that's the first web page. And why the heck did I put the W on that? Hello, I do not know why I did that. Sorry, I had a little glitch there. Let me get rid of that W. Okay. So you've made your first web page. That is not to be submitted to me. Now I want to show you the assignment, which will be submitted to me. And you can use the same form, the same blank, and make another copy of it and for this next assignment. Your assignment actually says, here it is. This document, by the way, is there on the Moodle page. I want you to construct a very basic HTML only page, similar to that little hello page we just did, but I want you to use using that basic mandatory minimum structure, which, by the way, I've repeated for you down here. Repeated it for you down here. I want you to, as explained here, create a Notepad++ brackets or some other code editor. I want you to name the page, your last name. Actually, you can use your first name if you want. It's fine. Your name, hyphen, welcome.html. Hey, do notice, it's all lowercase. There's no space between name and welcome. No special characters. Really important. Okay? In addition to the minimum structure, I want you to make a title as your name about me. Make the H1 to be your name. I want you to have at least 3 paragraphs. I want you to go grab the text that you used in that Moodle welcome assignment and go paste it in here. Into your Notepad++ or your brackets, and then break it up into paragraphs, at least 3 paragraphs. If you don't have enough for 3 paragraphs, well, then beef it up a little bit and add enough for 3 paragraphs. It only takes a single sentence to be a paragraph, by the way. And you remember the opening and closing tags. H1 is open, close H1. P is open, close P. I want you to save your file. I want you to test it by opening up in a browser. Use the run menu, or you can do file open from your browser. You can drag and drop on a browser, or you can use the live preview thing in brackets or whatever. You get it all set. You save it. There's no images on it. There's no CSS in it, right? Just extremely simple document. And I want you to upload it to Moodle into the Dropbox. That's it. Good luck, and let me know if you have any questions.